I almost canceled the audition. Not because I was nervous, not because I didn't think the band could make it. I almost canceled because after 6 months of searching for a vocalist, I was sick of hearing mediocre singers butcher songs I'd spent weeks writing. By that point, the Static Hearts was basically just me. I was Felix, 26, guitarist, songwriter, unofficial manager, and apparently professional collector of disappointment. Our drummer Hayden kept threatening to quit. Our bassist Claire had stopped asking when we'd find a singer. Every Thursday we'd rent the same tiny rehearsal room above a tattoo shop, play instrumentals for 2 hours, then go home pretending we weren't wasting our time. Then Wyatt walked in and immediately made me regret inviting him. The door slammed open 10 minutes late. A tall guy with messy dark hair, ripped black jeans, and an expression that looked permanently annoyed stepped inside carrying absolutely nothing. No microphone, no notebook, no water bottle, just attitude. "You Felix?" he asked. I looked up from my guitar. "Yeah," he nodded. "Cool." Then he sat down. That was it. No introduction, no apology for being late, nothing. Claire raised an eyebrow. Hayden looked at me like, "Seriously? This guy?" I already hated him. "You got any experience?" I asked. Wyatt shrugged. Some? Yeah. I waited. Apparently, he wasn't planning to elaborate. Finally, Hayden groaned. "Man, are you always this helpful?" Wyatt looked at him. "Only when people ask boring questions." Claire snorted, trying not to laugh. I didn't. "Great, another arrogant singer. Exactly what we needed." "Let's just hear him," Claire said. I handed Wyatt the lyric sheet. He barely glanced at it. "What's the song about?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "It matters if you want me to sing it right." Something about the way he said it irritated me. Like he wasn't auditioning for my band, like he was interviewing us. "It's about wanting something you can't have." Wyatt nodded once. "Got it." Then the music started, and everything changed. The first note nearly made me miss a chord. Not because it was loud, because it was unbelievable. The guy's voice was ridiculous. Warm, raw, powerful. Every word sounded real, like he'd lived through every lyric himself. The room went completely silent. Even Hayden stopped moving. Wyatt closed his eyes while singing. No showmanship, no dramatic gestures, just honesty. And somehow that hit harder than anything else. When the song ended, nobody spoke. For 3 full seconds. Then Claire whispered, "Holy shit." Wyatt opened his eyes. "You done?" I stared at him. He sounded annoyed, like he hadn't just casually become the best vocalist we'd ever heard. "Where the hell have you been?" Hayden asked. Wyatt shrugged. "Around." I was beginning to realize that shrugging was his primary form of communication. We played 3 more songs. Each one somehow sounded better. The problem was that every time the music stopped, Wyatt started talking again, and every time he talked, I liked him less. He criticized arrangements, questioned lyrics, called one of my guitar solos unnecessarily dramatic. At one point, he literally asked if I wrote breakup songs because I'd never actually dated anyone. I almost threw a drumstick at him. By the end of rehearsal, I was exhausted. Wyatt stood up. "Guess that's it." "That's it?" I repeated. "Yeah." "You don't want to know if you're in the band?" He looked confused. "I already know I'm in the band." Claire burst out laughing. Hayden nearly choked. I stared at him. The worst part? He was right. We needed him, desperately, and he knew it. "See you Thursday," Wyatt said. Then he walked out. Just like that. The door slammed behind him. Silence. Then Hayden pointed at the door. "I hate him." "Same," Claire said. I rubbed my forehead. "Same." Neither of them said anything. Finally, Claire smiled. "But that voice!" I groaned. "Yeah, that voice." For the next month, every rehearsal followed the exact same pattern. Wyatt arrived late, sang perfectly, annoyed everyone, left, repeat. He challenged every decision I made, every song, every lyric, every arrangement. One night, he crossed out an entire verse I'd written, right in front of me. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Fixing it." I almost exploded. "You don't get to rewrite my songs." "There are songs if I'm singing them." "No." "Yes." "No." "Okay." The fact he looked completely calm somehow made me even angrier. Claire eventually separated us before somebody got punched. The weird thing was that the songs kept getting better. I hated admitting it, but Wyatt's ideas worked. He'd cut unnecessary lines, suggest different melodies, push emotional moments harder. Every argument improved something, which made it impossible to dismiss him, and somehow even more frustrating. One Thursday after rehearsal, everyone else left early. Just me and Wyatt remained. I was packing cables, he was sitting on the edge of the stage, scrolling through his phone. The silence felt strange. Usually we were arguing. Finally, he spoke. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "You think I hate you." I looked up. "You don't?" Wyatt smirked. "No. Could have fooled me." He shrugged. "I just think you're stubborn." I laughed. "That's rich coming from you." "Fair." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he added, "You write good songs." The compliment caught me off guard, especially coming from him. "Thanks. Most of them, anyway." I rolled my eyes. "There he is." He laughed. And for the first time, I noticed something. When Wyatt wasn't trying to be difficult, he was actually kind of attractive. Unfortunately, realizing that only created a whole new problem. The first time Wyatt and I wrote a song together, it happened completely by accident, and it started with an argument. Of course it did. We were preparing for our first real gig. Nothing huge. Just a Friday night slot at a crowded indie bar downtown. Still, it mattered. For the first time in almost a year, the Static Hearts actually felt like a band. The venue wanted one new song in our set, something original, something memorable, which should have been easy, except Wyatt hated every idea I brought in. Too safe, trash. Too sad, trash. Too complicated, also trash. By the fourth rejection, I was ready to strangle him with the guitar cable. "Do you actually have suggestions?" I snapped. "Yeah, then say them." Wyatt looked up from the couch. "Write something honest." I stared at him. "What does that even mean?" "It means every song you've shown me sounds like you're trying to impress people." I laughed. "Okay, I'm serious. So am I." He stood. Now we were eye level, neither of us backing down. "You hide behind metaphors. You hide behind being in front." Claire immediately stood up. "Okay, we're not doing this." But Wyatt ignored her. "No, seriously. Every lyric sounds like you're afraid somebody might figure out what you're actually feeling." I opened my mouth, then closed it, because I hated how close he was to the truth. Wyatt noticed. The smug bastard noticed immediately. His expression softened slightly, just enough to make me more annoyed. "See," he said quietly. I grabbed my guitar. "I'm done." Then I walked out. The problem was that I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said, the entire drive home, the entire night, even the next morning, because despite everything, Wyatt wasn't wrong. Most of my songs were emotional, but they were never personal, not really. I'd always hidden behind stories and fictional situations, safer that way, less vulnerable, less embarrassing. 3 days later, I showed up alone at the rehearsal room. I needed space to write. The place was empty, exactly what I wanted, or so I thought. I opened the door. Wyatt was already there, sitting cross-legged on the stage, notebook in hand. I immediately turned around. "Nope, don't be dramatic. I'm leaving." "You literally rented the room," I sighed. Unfortunately true. Wyatt looked surprisingly tired, dark circles under his eyes, hair even messier than usual. He held up his notebook. "I've been writing." "Congratulations. You're still mad." Very observant. A small smile appeared, then disappeared. For some reason he looked nervous, which I'd never seen before, not once. "Look," he said. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I laughed. That's a first. "I'm serious." I sat down across from him, mostly because curiosity was winning. Wyatt flipped open his notebook. I started writing after rehearsal. I glanced down. Lyrics covered multiple pages, messy handwriting, crossed out lines, entire sections rewritten. "You wrote all that?" "Yeah." I read a few lines, then a few more, then the entire page. The room became very quiet. Because the lyrics weren't about heartbreak or some fictional romance. They were about frustration, about wanting someone to understand you, about constantly clashing with somebody who somehow still occupied your thoughts. I looked up. Wyatt was watching me carefully. "What?" he asked. "This is about me." His ears turned slightly red, which was answer enough. "Not entirely." "Wyatt." "Fine, maybe a little." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You wrote a song about arguing with me?" He shrugged. "Apparently." I started laughing, actually laughing, for almost a minute. Wyatt looked offended. "It's not funny." "It's extremely funny." "It's a good song." "It is a good song." That shut both of us up, because it was really good, uncomfortably good. The kind of lyrics that felt painfully honest. Wyatt rubbed the back of his neck. "Your turn." "My turn?" "Write your side." I stared at him. "What?" "The song." He pointed between us. "You write your version." I should have said no. Instead, I grabbed my notebook. 3 hours disappeared just like that, back and forth, lyric after lyric, verse after verse. For the first time since Wyatt joined the band, we weren't fighting. We were building something. The strange part? The song wasn't romantic. Not exactly. But it was personal. Every line felt like a conversation neither of us could have out loud. Every verse responded to something the other person had written. By sunset, we had an entire song. And somehow, it was the best thing we'd ever created. When Claire and Hayden heard it later that week, their reactions were immediate. "Okay," Claire said. "What the hell is this?" "What?" Hayden pointed at us. "This." "This what?" "The chemistry." Wyatt nearly dropped his water bottle. I rolled my eyes. "There's no chemistry." "Sure," Claire smirked. "You literally wrote a song arguing with each other." "It's not like that." "It sounds exactly like that." The performance that Friday was packed, far more crowded than expected. The room buzzed with conversation and cheap beer. People squeezed shoulder to shoulder near the stage. My stomach twisted with nerves. Wyatt looked completely calm. Of course he did. 10 minutes before showtime, he sat beside me backstage. For once, neither of us spoke. Then he nudged my shoulder. "Hey." "What?" "You nervous?" "No." "You're lying." I sighed. "A little." Wyatt nodded. Then he said something unexpected. "You don't need to be." I looked at him. His expression was completely serious. "The songs are good." A pause. "So are you." The words hit harder than they should have. For a second, I forgot how to respond. Thankfully, Hayden interrupted. 5 minutes. The moment disappeared. But the feeling stayed. That night, we played the new song last. The reaction was immediate. The crowd loved it. People actually sang the chorus back by the second repetition. When the final note ended, the room erupted. Cheers, applause, shouting. The biggest response we'd ever received. I looked across the stage. Wyatt was already looking at me. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us needed to. We both knew we just created something special, something neither of us could have written alone. And that realization scared me far more than the performance ever had. Because for the first time, I wasn't just thinking about Wyatt when we were rehearsing. I was thinking about him when he wasn't around too. After the gig, everything should have felt easier. Instead, it got complicated. Fast. The new song blew up locally. Not viral or anything dramatic, but people noticed. Videos started circulating online. A few music blogs mentioned us. Venues that had ignored our emails suddenly started responding. For the first time, the Static Hearts had momentum. And at the center of all of it was the song Wyatt and I had written together. The song that was secretly about us, even if nobody else knew it. At least that's what I told myself. Then one night I made the mistake of reading the comments. "These two are definitely in love. The tension between the singer and guitarist is insane. Are they dating?" I immediately closed the app, then reopened it 5 minutes later, which was obviously worse. By the time rehearsal started, I was annoyed for reasons I couldn't explain. Wyatt noticed immediately.
"What's wrong with you?"
"Nothing." "You have your angry face." "This is just my face." Claire laughed from across the room.
No, he's got a point.
Traitors. I plugged in my guitar. "Can we just rehearse?" Wyatt studied me for a moment, then dropped it, which somehow felt suspicious. Halfway through practice, Hayden suggested we start writing another song. That should have been exciting. Instead, it created a new problem, because now Wyatt and I had expectations. Everyone wanted another song like the first one, another emotionally charged duet, another miracle. Unfortunately, miracles aren't easy to repeat. For 2 weeks we got nowhere. Every idea felt forced, every lyric sounded fake, every melody got rejected. The more pressure we felt, the worse it became. One Thursday evening, everyone left early except Wyatt and me, again. Apparently, the universe enjoyed putting us together. Rain hammered the windows outside. The rehearsal room felt smaller than usual. Wyatt sat on the floor surrounded by crumpled notebook pages. I sat on an amp pretending to write. Neither of us had spoken in nearly 20 minutes. Finally, Wyatt sighed. Maybe they're right. I looked up. Who? The comments. My stomach immediately tightened. Great. That. What comments? He gave me a look. The comments. Unfortunately, I knew exactly which comments. Oh. A long silence followed. Then Wyatt laughed softly. People are weird. Yeah. They think every song is about romance. Yeah. More silence. Then, you ever write about somebody specific? I froze. The question sounded casual. Too casual. Like he wasn't actually asking what he was asking. I stared at my notebook. Sometimes. Wyatt nodded. Me too. The room felt strangely warm. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, neither of us moved. Then Wyatt looked down at his notebook. Most of the songs lately. My pulse skipped. I wasn't imagining that. There was no way I was imagining that. Before I could respond, Wyatt suddenly stood. Forget it. What? Nothing. Wyatt. He shook his head. Nope. Then he walked toward the vending machine. Conversation over. Or at least it should have been. Instead, I followed him, which was probably a mistake. You can't just say something like that and leave. Watch me. Wyatt. He grabbed a soda, still refusing to look at me, and suddenly I realized something. He looked nervous. Again. The same way he looked when showing me those lyrics. The realization hit hard. Wyatt wasn't fearless. He only acted fearless. There was a difference. What were you going to say? I asked quietly. His jaw tightened. Nothing important. Liar. A small smile appeared, then vanished. You first. What? You tell me who you've been writing about. I laughed. Absolutely not. Then we're even. We stared at each other, neither willing to surrender. Eventually, Wyatt won, mostly because he always seemed comfortable sitting in silence. I wasn't. By the time we packed up, the conversation remained unfinished. But something had changed. The tension felt different now, less hostile, more dangerous. A week later, we got invited to perform at a summer music festival, our biggest opportunity yet. The entire band celebrated. Hayden nearly cried. Claire immediately started planning set lists. Wyatt just looked happy, which somehow made him look younger, softer, more approachable. That night, everyone went out for drinks. Halfway through the evening, Hayden disappeared with someone he'd met at the bar. Claire left shortly afterward, leaving Wyatt and me alone. Again. Apparently, this kept happening. The bar was loud, packed, music blasted from old speakers. Yet somehow our corner felt isolated. Wyatt spun his glass slowly. You know what I hate? Everything. He laughed. Fair. Then he leaned back. I hate interviews. What interviews? The ones we're going to get eventually. I nearly choked on my drink. Confident. I'm realistic. There's a difference? Not really. I rolled my eyes. Wyatt grinned. Then his expression softened. People are going to ask questions. So? So they always do. I knew where this was heading. Unfortunately. The comments again. The comments again. I stared at my drink. Wyatt stared at his. Neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, Does it bother you? What? That people think that? I knew exactly what he meant, and I knew exactly how dangerous the question was. The smart answer would have been yes. The safe answer would have been yes. Instead, I hesitated, and that hesitation told him everything. Wyatt looked away first, a small smile touching the corner of his mouth. Not mocking, not smug, just understanding. That somehow terrified me more, because for the first time, it felt like we were both standing on the edge of the same cliff, and neither of us knew who was going to jump first. Later that night, after we left the bar, we walked toward the train station together. The streets were nearly empty. Warm summer air drifted through the city. Neither of us seemed eager to say goodbye. Finally, Wyatt stopped. "This is me." I nodded. "Yeah." Neither of us moved. A ridiculous amount of silence passed. Then Wyatt smiled. A real smile. Not sarcastic, not teasing, just genuine. And somehow it completely wrecked me. "Night, Felix." "Night." He turned and walked away. I watched him disappear down the street, then immediately hated myself for watching, because the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. The songs weren't the reason I kept thinking about Wyatt. The songs were just the excuse. The festival was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to avoid thinking about Wyatt. 3 weeks that failed completely. The problem wasn't rehearsal anymore. It wasn't songwriting. It wasn't even the comments. The problem was that I'd started seeing parts of Wyatt nobody else saw. And once that happened, there was no going back. Most people only knew the loud version of him, the arrogant singer, the guy with an opinion about everything, the guy who could start an argument in an empty room. But I started noticing other things, like how he always bought coffee for Claire before rehearsals because she worked late shifts, or how he'd stay after everyone left to help Hayden pack equipment, or how he secretly got nervous before every performance, despite pretending otherwise. Little things, dangerous things, the kind of things that made liking somebody much harder to avoid. One evening, we stayed late working on new material. Everyone else had already gone home. The rehearsal room was dim except for a single lamp. Wyatt sat on the edge of the stage. I was tuning my guitar. Neither of us seemed eager to leave. Eventually, he spoke. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "We spend way too much time together." I laughed. "That's literally how bands work." "No," he pointed at me. "Normal bandmates don't text each other at 2 o'clock in the morning about lyrics." I immediately regretted laughing because he wasn't wrong. Over the past month, our conversations had expanded far beyond music. Movies, childhood stories, random observations, entire debates about things neither of us cared about. At some point, Wyatt had become the first person I wanted to tell things to, and that realization was terrifying. "Maybe you're just obsessed with me," I said. Wyatt smirked. "Maybe." My heart did something deeply unhelpful. Then he added, "You definitely are." There he is. The truth hurts. I threw a guitar pick at him. He caught it, smugly of course. A few days later, we played another local show. Smaller venue, nothing special. Except midway through the set, something happened. During the second verse of our song, the one we'd written together, I looked up. Wyatt was already looking at me. Not unusual, we'd done that before. But this time, neither of us looked away. A second passed, then another. The crowd disappeared. The music blurred. For one stupid moment, it felt like nobody else existed. Then Hayden missed a drum fill. The spell broke. Reality returned, and I immediately looked away. After the show, Claire cornered me. "Oh my God," I groaned. "What now? You two are ridiculous. We're literally just performing." She stared at me. "Felix." "What?" "Felix." I sighed. "Fine." Claire crossed her arms. "You know everybody sees it, right?" My stomach sank. "Sees what?" "The way you look at him." I laughed, way too quickly, way too defensively. Claire's expression didn't change, which was a problem, because Claire was rarely wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of the show, not because of the festival, because of her words, the way you look at him. The truth was that I'd stopped fighting it, at least internally. I knew I liked Wyatt. I knew it weeks ago. The real problem was not knowing if he felt the same. There were signs, plenty of signs, but Wyatt was impossible to read. One minute, he'd stare at me across the room like I was the only person there. The next, he'd spend an entire day acting completely normal. It drove me insane. Then came the night everything shifted. We were rehearsing for the festival, running through the final set. Near the end, the power went out. The entire building went dark. Everyone groaned. Hayden immediately started using his phone flashlight. Claire called the landlord. And somehow, Wyatt and I ended up sitting outside while waiting. The city glowed around us. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement. The air smelled like rain. For a while, we sat in silence. Then Wyatt said, "Can I ask you something?" I already knew I wouldn't like it. "Sure." He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "What are we doing?" My pulse immediately doubled. "What?" "You know what I mean." Unfortunately, I did. The silence stretched. Wyatt stared at the street, not at me, which somehow made it harder. "We're in a band." He laughed softly. "That's not what I mean." I looked away. Every instinct screamed at me to change the subject, to make a joke, to escape. Instead, I asked, "What do you think we're doing?" Wyatt took a long breath, then another. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely scared. "I think we're pretending." My heart nearly stopped. Neither of us spoke. Cars passed in the distance. Rain dripped from a nearby fire escape. The entire city seemed to hold its breath. Then Wyatt looked at me, directly. No jokes, no sarcasm, nothing to hide behind. And suddenly, every song we'd written together made sense. Every argument, every late-night conversation, every moment that felt bigger than friendship. All of it. "I don't know how to stop thinking about you," he admitted quietly. The words hit like a punch. Not because they surprised me, because I'd wanted to hear them for months, and because I knew exactly what they meant. I looked down, then back at him. Wyatt wasn't looking away. He wasn't hiding. For once, neither of us could. "You make this really difficult," I said. A nervous laugh escaped him. "Yeah. You drive me insane." "I know." "You argue with everything." "True." I shook my head, then smiled despite myself. And Wyatt smiled too, the genuine one, the dangerous one, the one that always destroyed my ability to think clearly. For a moment, neither of us moved. The distance between us felt impossibly small. Then Claire opened the rehearsal room door. The power's back. The moment shattered instantly. Wyatt groaned. I laughed. And somehow, neither of us felt disappointed. Because the conversation wasn't unfinished anymore. Not really. For the first time, we both knew. Now we just had to figure out what happened next. After that night outside the rehearsal room, everything changed. And somehow, nothing changed at all. Nobody confessed. Nobody made some dramatic speech. Nobody kissed under the rain like a scene from a movie. Instead, Wyatt and I did what we'd always done. We kept showing up. The difference was that now we both knew. The secret was gone. And that made every interaction feel completely different. A glance lasted a little longer. A joke carried a little more meaning. Every accidental touch suddenly felt very intentional. It was torture. The good kind. The festival arrived faster than expected. Thousands of people, multiple stages, actual security guards, real production crews. The biggest crowd any of us had ever played for. Hayden looked like he might throw up. Claire couldn't stop pacing. I wasn't doing much better. Only Wyatt seemed calm. At least until we were 10 minutes from going on stage. Then I found him alone behind the venue, sitting on a flight case, staring at the ground. For once, completely silent. I sat beside him. "You okay?" Wyatt laughed nervously. "No, same." He rubbed his hands together, a habit I'd never noticed before. Then he looked at me. "If this goes badly, I'm blaming you." I smiled. "There he is. Just wanted you to feel comfortable." The familiar banter helped. For a moment. Then Wyatt became serious again. "Felix." "What?" His expression softened, and suddenly the noise of the festival seemed far away. "Thanks." I frowned. "For what?" "For finding me." The words caught me completely off guard. Wyatt looked away before continuing. "I know I don't say stuff like this." "No kidding." He rolled his eyes. "Shut up." I laughed. Then he smiled too, a smaller smile, more vulnerable. "The band," he continued, "the songs." A pause. "You." My chest tightened. For once, neither of us joked. Neither of us hid. Then a stage manager appeared. 5 minutes. Reality returned immediately. Wyatt stood. I stood too. For a second we simply looked at each other. Then Hayden yelled from somewhere nearby, and the moment disappeared again. We walked on stage to the biggest crowd we'd ever seen. The lights were blinding. The noise was deafening. My hands shook around my guitar. Then the first song started and everything clicked. Every rehearsal, every argument, every late-night writing session, all of it had led here. The crowd responded instantly. People danced, sang, cheered. By the third song, I stopped feeling nervous. By the fourth, I was actually having fun. Then we reached the song. The song Wyatt and I had written about each other. The song that changed everything. The opening chords rang out. The crowd erupted. Apparently, it had become our signature. Wyatt glanced at me. I glanced back. And suddenly, I remembered the first rehearsal, the first argument, the first time I'd heard his voice. It felt like years ago. The song ended with the loudest reaction of the night. The audience went absolutely insane. For several seconds, I couldn't hear anything except cheering. When we finally walked off stage, everyone was shouting. Crew members congratulated us. Claire was crying. Hayden was hugging random strangers. The whole thing felt unreal. Then I felt someone grab my wrist. "Wyatt, come here." Before I could ask why, he pulled me away from the chaos. Through a side gate, past equipment trucks, toward a quiet area behind the venue. The noise faded behind us. Finally, we stopped, both breathing hard, both still riding the adrenaline rush. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Wyatt laughed. An honest, disbelieving laugh. "We actually did it." "Yeah, we actually did it." I couldn't stop smiling. Neither could he. Then the silence changed. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just full. The kind of silence that only happens when two people already understand each other. Wyatt looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly every excuse I had been using for months disappeared. No more pretending, no more avoiding it, no more hiding behind songs. His voice became quieter. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "I spent months writing lyrics because I couldn't just say things directly." I laughed. "Honestly, that's very on brand for us, right?" He stepped closer. "Not much, just enough." My heart immediately forgot how to function. Wyatt shook his head, still smiling. "All those songs. Yeah, they would have been shorter if we just talked." "Probably." Another step. Another impossible moment. Neither of us looking away. Neither of us pretending anymore. Then Wyatt exhaled slowly, and for the first time since I'd met him, the confident act disappeared completely. No sarcasm, no attitude, just honesty. "I like you, Felix." Simple, direct, terrifying, perfect. My chest felt too tight. My brain stopped working. All the speeches I'd imagined over the past few months vanished instantly, leaving only the truth. "I know." Wyatt laughed. "That's your response?" I was getting there. Apparently not. I stepped closer, too. Now there was barely any space left between us, and suddenly everything felt easy, the easiest thing in the world. "I like you too." The words finally existed outside my head, and once they did, I couldn't believe I'd waited so long. Wyatt smiled, the biggest smile I'd ever seen from him, the kind that transformed his entire face, the kind I'd secretly been falling for all year. And standing there behind a noisy music festival, surrounded by equipment trucks and distant music, it felt like the beginning of something far bigger than the band, something we'd accidentally been writing toward from the very start. Dating Wyatt was surprisingly easy. Keeping it a secret from the band was impossible. We lasted exactly 6 days. 6, not weeks, not months, days. The funny part was that neither of us even told anyone. Claire figured it out herself. Of course she did. We were rehearsing for an upcoming show. Everything felt normal, at least to us. Wyatt was leaning against an amp while I adjusted pedals. Nothing suspicious, nothing obvious. Then Claire walked in carrying coffee. She looked at me, then Wyatt, then me again, and immediately groaned. Oh my God. My stomach dropped. "What? You idiots!" Wyatt looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Claire pointed at both of us. "You finally did it." The room went completely silent. Hayden slowly lowered his drumsticks. "What did they do?" Claire stared at him. "You seriously don't know?" Hayden looked between us. Then his eyes widened. "No way." Wyatt buried his face in his hands. I wanted the floor to open beneath me. Unfortunately, it didn't. Claire looked genuinely offended. I've been waiting 6 months. 6 months? Hayden repeated. I've been waiting since the second rehearsal. What? The arguing, she pointed dramatically. The songwriting, another point. The staring, third point. You weren't subtle. Wyatt looked at me. We were subtle. No, Claire and Hayden said simultaneously. That ended the discussion. The strange thing was how quickly everyone adjusted. Nobody made it weird. Nobody treated us differently. In fact, Hayden seemed relieved. Mostly because Wyatt and I stopped arguing quite as much. Not entirely. That would have been unrealistic. But enough. The biggest change happened during songwriting. For months, we'd hidden feelings inside lyrics. Now we didn't have to, which should have made writing easier. Instead, it made writing harder, because suddenly we had nothing to hide behind. One evening, we sat alone in the rehearsal room working on a new song. Wyatt was sprawled across an old couch. I was sitting on the floor with a guitar. After 20 minutes of silence, he tossed his notebook aside. This is going nowhere. What does? Being happy. I laughed. What? Wyatt pointed at the empty page. All my good lyrics come from emotional suffering. Poor you. I'm serious. You'll survive. He groaned dramatically. I've lost my artistic edge. Your artistic edge was just unresolved feelings. Exactly. I couldn't stop smiling. Wyatt narrowed his eyes. Don't laugh. I'm definitely laughing. He threw a notebook at me. I caught it. Barely. The truth was that things weren't perfect. Nothing ever is. The band was growing. Shows became bigger. Opportunities increased. So did pressure. People expected more songs, better songs, more success. Sometimes it felt overwhelming. One night after rehearsal, Wyatt and I sat on the roof of our building. The city stretched beneath us. Lights glowing in every direction. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Wyatt broke the silence. Are you scared? I knew what he meant immediately. The band? He nodded. I thought about it. Yeah, me too. The honesty surprised me. Wyatt was usually the confident one, or at least pretended to be. What if this is as good as it gets? He asked quietly. I looked at him, the city reflected in his eyes. For a moment he seemed younger, more vulnerable. What if it isn't? He smiled. You always answer questions with questions. You always ask impossible questions. Fair. The silence returned, comfortable this time. Then Wyatt rested his head against my shoulder. A simple gesture, yet somehow it felt more intimate than any grand declaration. I used to think I needed music, he admitted. You do need music. No, he shook his head. Not like that. I waited. Wyatt looked out across the skyline. I thought if I could just sing enough, write enough, perform enough. His voice faded. Then he smiled. A lot of things make more sense now. I didn't ask him to explain. I didn't need to because I understood. For the first time in years, I felt something similar. Not certainty, not security, just direction. Like all the chaos finally pointed somewhere. A few months later, we released our first EP. 5 songs, including the original song that started everything. The response exceeded every expectation. Streams climbed, shows sold out, people connected with the music really connected with it. One evening I found Wyatt reading comments online, normally a terrible idea. This time he looked thoughtful. What? I asked. He handed me the phone. One comment stood out. These songs feel like conversations between two people learning how to tell the truth. I stared at it, then looked at Wyatt. Neither of us spoke. Because whoever wrote that had accidentally understood everything. The songs, the arguments, the band, us, all of it. Wyatt smiled softly. Not bad. I nodded. Not bad. For a moment we sat there quietly, listening to the rehearsal room settle around us. The same room where we'd met, the same room where we'd fought, the same room where we'd accidentally fallen for each other. Neither of us knew what happened next, whether the band would get bigger, whether success would last, whether life would become easier. But for once, that uncertainty didn't bother me. Because whatever came next, we weren't writing alone anymore. Success turned out to be much stranger than any of us expected. Not because of the music, because of everything that came with it. The attention, the expectations, the pressure, and most importantly, the fact that Wyatt and I were no longer just a couple. We were a couple in a band, which complicated things a lot. At first, it was manageable. Small interviews, local radio appearances, podcast invitations, nothing major. Then one interviewer asked the question we both been expecting, the question we'd spent months avoiding. "So," she said with a smile, "are the songs about each other?" The room immediately became silent. Claire nearly choked on her coffee. Hayden looked like he was trying not to laugh. And Wyatt? Wyatt looked directly at me, the same way he always did before deciding whether to start trouble. I knew that look. Unfortunately, the interviewer noticed. "Oh my God," Wyatt grinned. I groaned. And that was basically our answer. The clip ended up spreading online. People loved it, which somehow made everything worse, because suddenly everyone wanted details. Who wrote what? Which lyrics were real? When we'd started dating? Whether we'd fallen in love while writing music? The truth was complicated and somehow simpler than people expected. We didn't fall in love because of the songs. The songs just forced us to stop lying. One evening after rehearsal, Wyatt and I stayed behind again. Some habits never changed. The rehearsal room looked exactly the same as it had the day we met. Same worn couches, same scratched floors, same flickering light near the back wall. Wyatt sat on the stage. I sat beside him. For a while we watched the empty room. Then he laughed. "What?" I asked. He shook his head. "Remember our first rehearsal?" I immediately groaned. "You were awful." I was confident. "You were unbearable, yet somehow charming." "Absolutely not." Wyatt laughed harder. The sound echoed through the room. God, I loved that laugh. "I thought you hated me." "I did hate you." There it is. I smiled despite myself. The truth was that I remembered everything. The late arrival, the terrible attitude, the unbelievable voice, the immediate certainty that he'd become a problem. I just hadn't realized what kind of problem. Wyatt nudged my shoulder. "You know what's weird?" "What?" If I hadn't shown up that day, his voice faded. I understood the rest. No band, no songs, no us. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Because he was right. Entire lives can change because of one random decision. One audition, one conversation, one person walking through a door. Wyatt looked around the room. "You were looking for a singer." "Yeah." "You found one." "Barely." He rolled his eyes, then smiled. "But I found something too." I turned toward him. Wyatt's expression softened, the playful attitude disappearing, leaving only honesty. I was kind of lost before this. I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "I didn't really care about anything." He laughed softly. "Okay, that's not true." A pause. "I cared about music." Another pause. "But I didn't have direction." The room felt very still. "I do now." My chest tightened. Not because the words were dramatic, because they were real. Wyatt rarely spoke like this. When he did, every sentence mattered. I reached for his hand. He immediately squeezed mine. The simple familiarity of it made me smile. Months ago, I would have overanalyzed everything. Now it just felt natural, comfortable, home. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. The same kind of rain that had fallen during so many late rehearsals. The same kind of rain that seemed permanently attached to our story. Wyatt leaned back, looking up at the ceiling. "You think we'll still be doing this in 10 years? The band? Everything." I considered the question. The band, the music, us, the future, all impossible things to predict. Finally, I answered honestly. "I don't know." Wyatt nodded. "Good answer. But I know one thing." "What?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The guy who had crashed into my life and completely rearranged it. The guy who challenged everything. The guy who turned arguments into songs. The guy who somehow became my favorite person. Wyatt waited, a small smile already forming. I squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you showed up late." He laughed so hard he nearly fell off the stage. "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said." "Shut up." "No, seriously, shut up, Wyatt." Unfortunately, he was still laughing, and somehow that was my favorite sound in the world. The funny thing about love is that people expect some huge moment, some grand realization, some perfect ending. But most of the time it happens gradually, one conversation at a time, one song at a time, one ordinary day, until suddenly you can't remember life before that person. And that's exactly what happened to me. The story wasn't over yet, not even close, but for the first time I wasn't worried about the next chapter, because I already knew who I'd be writing it with. A year later, I was standing backstage at the biggest show of our lives, and all I could think about was the first time I met Wyatt. The guy who walked into an audition late, the guy I couldn't stand, the guy who somehow became the most important person in my life. Life is weird like that. The venue held nearly 3,000 people. 3,000. Just saying the number felt ridiculous. When we started, we'd been playing to crowds of 20 people, and a bartender who clearly wanted us to leave. Now there were lines outside, merch tables, fans singing lyrics before we even stepped on stage. It still didn't feel real. Claire walked past carrying her bass. "You ready?" "No." "Good." She patted my shoulder. "Means you still care." Then she disappeared. Hayden was already doing nervous stretches in a corner. Some things never changed. And Wyatt? Wyatt was pacing, which immediately made me smile. Because despite everything he'd accomplished, he still got nervous before every major show. He noticed me watching. "What?" "Nothing. You have that face." "What face?" "The one where you're secretly making fun of me." I laughed. "Maybe." Wyatt rolled his eyes, then walked over. The noise of the crowd rumbled through the walls, thousands of voices blending into a distant roar. For a moment we stood together in the middle of the chaos, neither speaking, just taking it in. Finally Wyatt broke the silence. "You know this is your fault." I immediately frowned. "My fault?" "Yeah." He pointed at the stage. "All of this. Pretty sure you helped." "Nah." Wyatt shook his head dramatically. "I was minding my own business. You literally auditioned. Against my better judgment." I laughed. There he was, the same sarcastic idiot I'd met a year ago, just slightly softer now, slightly happier, a lot more important. The stage manager appeared. 2 minutes! Everyone suddenly got serious. The familiar pre-show energy settled over us. Adrenaline, nerves, excitement. The feeling never disappeared, no matter how many shows we played. Wyatt looked toward the stage entrance, then back at me. His expression changed, becoming quieter, more thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something." That immediately sounded dangerous. "Oh?" He nodded. "Our first song." I smiled. "The argument song." The argument song. Neither of us remembered its official title anymore. At this point, it was just the argument song, the song that started everything. Wyatt laughed softly. "People always ask what it's about." "Yeah, they think it's some complicated metaphor." I knew where this was going, because I thought about it too. The truth was surprisingly simple. The song wasn't about falling in love, not really. It was about recognition, about seeing someone who challenged you, changed you, understood you, before either of you knew what to call it. Wyatt looked at me. "You know what the song was actually about?" "What?" His smile appeared, small and genuine. "The fact that you annoyed me." I burst out laughing. "That's your big realization?" "I'm serious. You wrote multiple verses because I annoyed you, and somehow that became a relationship. That's concerning." "A little." The stage manager yelled again. 30 seconds! The crowd erupted beyond the curtains, a wave of sound crashing toward us. Claire took her position. Hayden grabbed his sticks. Everything was ready. The moment had arrived. Wyatt squeezed my shoulder, then stopped, like he'd remembered something. "What?" I asked. For once, he looked completely sincere. No jokes, no teasing, nothing hiding behind the words. I'm glad I answered that audition. The simple honesty hit harder than any speech could have, because I knew exactly what he meant. Not just the band, not just the music, everything. The entire life we'd built. The songs, the memories, the future, all because one stubborn singer walked into a rehearsal room late. I smiled. "I'm glad you were late." Wyatt immediately laughed. There it is again, still romantic, still weird. The lights dimmed, the crowd screamed, and then we walked on stage, together. The opening notes echoed through the venue. Thousands of people cheered. The same rush hit me, the same excitement, the same feeling that music could change everything. Because sometimes it can. Not through fame, not through success, but through people, through connections, through the unexpected moments that completely rewrite your life. As I looked across the stage, Wyatt was already looking back, just like he always did. And suddenly, I realized something. The band had never really been the story. It was how the story started. The real story was everything that came after. 2 stubborn musicians, 100 arguments, a handful of songs, and 1 love story neither of them saw coming. The crowd sang the chorus back to us, louder than ever before, and for the first time all night, I stopped thinking about the future, stopped worrying about what came next, because whatever happened, whatever changed, whatever challenges waited ahead, we'd write through them together, just like we always had, 1 song at a time.